Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. As you all know, that at Million Marker, we help people take control of their health by eliminating their exposure to plastic chemicals. Simultaneously, our service also help people to carbon footprint naturally. If everyone detoxes from plastic chemicals, then the demand for plastic would decrease. And transition to a greener lifestyle is fun, but it can also be very challenging, especially when you're just starting out. And that's why we're super, super excited to talk with Emma Rohmann today. Emma is an environmental engineer who has over 15 years of experience as green building consultant, and then she helps moms and mom-to-be to reduce toxins in their home and body. And Emma is also the host of the Missing Pillar of Health podcast. Joe, our chief scientific officer, and me had the pleasure of recording that with Emma, and we were very impressed. So Emma has like a lot of great knowledge. So we're just like super excited to have her. So I just saw her. Yay.
There we go.
How are you?
Great. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes, yes, same. So, okay, to start, I did a little bit intro already because I think we usually have people come on like as they're training health, but not a lot of people are actually training engineering. So I think that's like super, super special. So tell us a little bit about your background and what led you become an environmental toxin coach and consultant.
So my education is as an environmental engineer, and I got into the green building space in school. So I did a bunch of different co-ops, realized that the conventional environmental engineering type of work was not for me. Was fortunate enough to take a term as a green building consultant, and that's what I did ever since. So when I graduated, I worked for a firm in Toronto, and we worked on projects, large buildings, mostly commercial office buildings, multi-unit residential, some large community plans. And my evolution towards focusing on healthy homes began because I learned what was in our water in my school. I learned what was in our air and building materials through my career. And when I got pregnant, all of it started to become so much more important in different ways. And so I really did a deep dive into what toxics meant for our health, starting from a very kind of personally motivated place. But I realized how much our materials that we use to build things, our indoor air, all of the things that we buy not only impact us, but they impact the planet, they impact the broader community, and they impact the workers responsible for making it. So I wanted to take everything that I had learned in the kind of commercial green building field and allow everyday consumers, homeowners, parents like me be able to make an impact that I think a lot of people want to make, but don't know how. And the information that I found out there relating to toxics was really overwhelming. I found not very well researched, and I wanted to kind of fill that void. And so I created Green at Home. And I've been doing that ever since.
This is so awesome. Totally echoing with everything we love to do. But tell us a little bit about, what does a green building like consultant do?
So, I mean, there's lots of different definitions. When I wear my green building consultant hat, it's usually for very large projects, helping to make them more efficient, use less energy, water waste, and create healthier indoor spaces. And when it comes to the work that I do with homeowners, it really is taking that same lens from a very big scale and bringing it down into the more manageable. And so I mean, I use my company's name is Green at Home. Green often means just environmental. I use green as a very broad term that takes into consideration um, health of the planet and the like typical green aspect, as well as our individual health and the health of the broader community. So that's kind of how I approach green building. And
I love it that individual homeowners are also really benefiting from your experience working on big projects, being the green building engineer, and that you are able to narrow down, but also paint the big picture for them.
yeah, that's what I find that there's a lot of general understanding out there about some of these kind of green issues, but when it comes to actually the boots on the ground and the practical implementation of it, but also the practical implications of it, because there are so many people talking about like things that you can do to be greener or things that you can do to reduce toxins that are so broad and general and aren't really focused on where to get the maximum benefit. I really want to focus on helping people kind of get the most bang for their buck, so to speak, whether that's in a green sense or a health
That makes
sense.
sense. So what is green living to you?
I think really at its core, it is making conscious decisions about how we go about our daily lives, from the products that we buy to how we get around, to how we live in our homes, that consider the impact on the health of the planet and our health. I think that like at its core, it's really becoming more conscious and making decisions in a slower way, maybe, which can be hard in this day and age. But I think we really need to think more about the ramifications of our choices, and that's really at the
100% agree. So how does a person start to make healthier decisions about their household?
Again, I think it really has to start with a choice and a decision that it matters. Because if you're not willing to make it a priority, continuing on with business as usual. So if you're kind of new to the space and you're just, buying whatever on store shelves and just kind of living as the average consumer lives, it's going to require some changes. They're not necessarily going to be hard or painful or expensive, but you're going to have to make changes. And in order for us to change, we have to be really rooted in the knowledge that that change matters and it's important. And so, like any new habit, it is not going to happen on your own. So before you can start making healthier choices for you and your family and your household, it really does start with understanding why you want to do that and being fully grounded that it is important.
So what were some like items that you had like hard time letting go when you were like start making greener choices?
Yeah. Deodorant. That was probably the last thing to go. I remember. So I started my journey of switching to less toxic products in university. And I would say I started with cleaning products because I discovered what we were putting down our drains ended up in the water that became our drinking water, and what our drinking water treatment plants could not remove. So I started with cleaners. That was a pretty easy change, but that is way easier now because the cleaning products, 15 to 20 years ago, the green cleaners, they kind of sucked. They were not very good. We have so many more options now. But I always had a backup conventional antiperspirant in my desk drawer at work. If I knew that I like stress sweat and it tends to smell more. I think a lot of people have that issue. And so I would have an antiperspirant because I didn't believe in my natural deodorant enough for those particular instances. Um, and so that was probably the very last product that I don't remember the last time I wore antiperspirant now. So that was probably the last one that I switched. And shampoo. Shampoo was also very difficult for me. I have dry,
Curly hair. Yeah.
curly hair, and that was also
That's a hard one. Many of our Detect and Detox Kit users are aware of the toxins in their personal care product and foods, and yes, hair product is one of them, the top one that people are always concerned about. But what else can people find the toxins that they might not expect?
So, and I think a lot of people get really hung up and stuck on the personal care products and the cleaners. And I think those are a great place to start because you use them every day, you use them up all the time. Um, and they're pretty small incremental purchases. And so it's very kind of easy to start making those changes. But it can be really easy to get stuck in that kind of spiral of always looking for the next best personal care product or cleaner, and you never leave that little sphere of exposure. And so I think it's important, to recognize what improvements you could make with those products, but also understand that those are not necessarily your biggest exposures or the only thing that you can be doing to lower your toxic load. And so the other areas that people are often surprised about is household dust is number one. And the beautiful thing about this is that dusting is free. And sure, it takes time, so it's not totally free, but it doesn't cost money. And yes, I know not many people actually enjoy dusting. But if you are not able to make other changes in your home, like let's say, you have old furniture that has flame retardants, or you're in a new build and there's different things that are still settling out into the air. All of these kind of particulate matter settle out in household dust. And so you don't need, like I tell people, you don't have to go out and buy all new furniture or do all these major expensive changes, but look at ways that you can mitigate your exposure from the things you can't change. And dusting is one of the simplest ways to do that. Also vacuuming with a HEPA filter on the vacuum. So dust is one area that I think is often overlooked. I know it's not sexy. It doesn't make for great headlines, but it's simple to address. And introducing fresh air into your home as well to that end. So getting rid of highly fragranced products, switching out your cleaning products to more natural options and your personal care products, that can go a long way to improving your indoor air quality. But our homes, they're always going to have things that are being released into the air. So dusting helps deal with the kind of solid particulates. The volatile organic compounds that are released from a myriad of different things in our homes, they can be dealt with by essentially diluting measure and bringing in fresh air. And so whether that's opening a window, whether that's if you're in a new home that has a ventilation system, running your exhaust fans. People, you need to run your exhaust fan when you're cooking.
Yes.
Full stop. That it doesn't need to be, you don't need to always think that you have to buy some super fancy, expensive piece of equipment, but you should absolutely have an exhaust fan over your stove that is vented outside, and you should be using that when you cook. I think those are probably a few of the things that they're so simple, but they don't get talked about very often. And so those are kind of the simple habits that we can all get into as we're building up more of our healthy kind of product purchases, which reading labels would be.
Yeah, especially these actions takes time, but they don't really cost that much when it comes to dusting, exactly like you said. But now when it's to come to stuff that costs, what are some like a long-term goals a person should like look towards when it comes to creating healthy home, like air filter, new flooring? What are those things?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're renovating, then I think absolutely baking in time up front to start researching um, healthier options for sure. There are very few cases where I would suggest that somebody renovate purely for reducing toxins. Like there's likely going to have to be another reason that you're renovating to make it worthwhile for you. Um, and things like your furniture, those are big ticket items. Again, I do not advocate for throwing out everything that you have and replacing it right away, but thinking ahead and when your furniture is starting to wear down or you're remodeling or whatever, leaving time to research and source something that is going to be lower in toxins is important. And again, that's more of a longer term thing. Same with Teflon. Um, this is contentious, but I don't suggest that you throw out all of your Teflon cookware. If it's scratched, absolutely. I think you should be using it with other cookware. So if you're using 100% Teflon all the time, mix in some other things like stainless steel or cast iron. But if you have a brand new Teflon pan, use it on very low heat. Make sure it's not scratched, and you're not likely to be exposed to the toxins in it. You've already had the impact of the manufacturing, which is the biggest problem with Teflon, in my opinion. But as Teflon scratches, it has a limited lifespan. So plan ahead as you need to make those changes. So those are kind of like longer term. I just wanted to flag those because so many people think that you need to like get rid of them right away. So that's more kind of longer term planning for everyday things. When it comes to air purifiers, I would honestly rather see you start thinking about, if you're in an older home, this will be more important, but having ventilation, like having a good ventilator, mechanical ventilator, if you have a furnace in your house, to help bring in air when you can't necessarily leave your windows wide open. Newer homes should be built with this in place because it's the only way they can get fresh air. Old homes are built so that the fresh air from outside leaks through the leaky walls and windows because they were not built to be airtight. New homes are fully sealed, so they should have a ventilator. People need to learn how to use them, right? Homes, just like cars, are becoming more sophisticated. There's a lot more equipment in them, and we aren't necessarily taught what to do with it. And so learning how to use your ventilation system, I would say that would come first. And then, sure, air purifiers, depending on the kind that you have, because there are so many options out there right now. They are not all created equal. But I think that is something to consider after you've already made moves to reduce toxins that are entering your air in the first place. An air purifier will not solve you running scented plug-in air fresheners day in, day out. An air purifier will not correct wearing perfume all the time and heavily scented shampoos and perfume and products to bed and stuff like that. It won't do it. So much like how I talk about detoxing our bodies, we need to reduce the input before we can start worrying about reducing or removing what's in the air in the first place. So yes, air purifiers can be a consideration for some people. They're not necessarily the first line of defense and aren't necessarily the be all end all. I think people think they have an air purifier and they don't have to think about anything else. But I like to frame it kind of, it's a end goal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you have a lot of like recommended products on your website too. So how do you go about, vetting and selecting items?
I spent a ridiculous amount of time in the early days of my journey, especially learning how to read labels. It's it's kind of like in the process of learning how to read nutrition labels on food packages. We're not really taught how to read the marketing and figure out and cut through. So hours, lots and lots of hours. And then when it comes to the products that are in my online shop and the products that I recommend in various resources, most of them are ones that I've used myself. I am really particular with brands that I will partner with and put my name beside. And I want to make sure that, if I'm suggesting that somebody else uses it, I want to be pretty certain that it works, it's well made. So a lot of them, I've spoken to the manufacturers personally. Um, and if I haven't tried them myself, then I know people who have. And all of them I have looked at how they're made, what goes in it, and that the ingredients are safer for us and
Love it.
planet.
I know you have a ton of guides on your website that people can download, like so many different categories. Even what you just said, like we're reading labels, and then how does this marketing greenwashing versus actually green, like so much great resources. So tell us all about those guides.
Yeah, so like you say, there are a pile of them. They're on the Learn page on my website, so greenathome.ca/learn. A few of the most popular ones, I have one for hormone disruptors to avoid before having a baby, and that is specifically focused on the hormone disruptors most linked with fertility, prenatal and early childhood development concerns. And I walk through the things that you can do to help avoid them. I also have a room by room hormone disruptor checklist, which is great for when you are already pregnant or have young children in your home and you need to look at kind of a broader scope of things. And because I mentioned air purifiers and making sure that you have one that does what you say it does, because they're not all the same, I do have a air purifier guide up there as well. So those are just
This is awesome.
three
So,
examples.
and then you also have counseling sessions with people. So, what does the session with you look like? If someone wants to receive the green
Yes.
consulting.
Yeah, so one-on-one consultations can be booked with me on it. I like to make sure that it's a good fit and that I can help with what you want to do. So often those are booked in video consultations. And so for those, reach out. We can see what option is best for you. I also offer renovation and design support. And then I have two programs. So one is a membership program for folks who have young children. And by young children, I really mean anything from baby to adolescence, because that's kind of the biggest impacts that you can have in future adult health. And that takes you through a whole home detox process with my support. And then I have my Prepping for Pregnancy online program as well. And that's for folks who are trying to conceive or in their first couple of trimesters. It's a 6-week, really, again, super focused on the things that matter most in those early stages, because not everything matters to everybody all the time. And it's so important to hone in on where you're going to get the biggest results. So those are some of the ways that I can help.
Yeah, and these two are like super critical time when a baby's growing, as well as when a kid is developing pubertal stage. And yeah, these are such critical windows for people to think about greening their home and detoxing. That's amazing. Now tell us about the missing pillar of health podcast, because Joe, our chief scientific officer, and I had the pleasure to be on. So what kind of topic do you cover, and where can our followers find it?
Yeah. So, my episode with you guys on body burden and testing was so great. And the idea of the podcast is really talking about issues with our health, particularly women's and children's health, that are not well understood or often misinformed. So I have a lot of naturopathic doctors come on, and we've talked about things like mold illness, fertility, gut health, vaccines, sleep, those sorts of things. I've had dietitian on healthy eating for kids, manufacturers of ethical products, and then I do solo shows as well on a myriad of mostly focused on toxins and healthy home. So things like heavy metals in rice and choosing non-toxic furniture and children's products and those sorts of things. So we are 85 episodes in to date, so there's lots.
This is so
lots to
cool.
listen
So
to.
thank you so much, like giving all these great tips and really, really practical tips. So, and also thank you everyone for joining us. So be sure to follow Emma at Emma_Green at home. And then you can learn more about Emma's service guides, podcasts, and everything by clicking link in bio. So we'll have all the information there. So thank you so much, Emma. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, everybody feel free to reach out if you have any
Talk to you
questions
soon.
following this.
Okay, bye.
Bye.